Okay.
So we have to have a conversation about specifically bass players.
It does seem to be bass players. Oh,
Is
drummers too. Drummers too.
the main thing that happened this week for my band is that the guy who plays bass for us and was also our acting music director was just kind of like, I think my time in this particular capacity is ending. And after these gigs, I'm going to be moving on to other things. And at different points in my life or other points in my career, getting that kind of news would have been a massive setback or
Yeah.
roadblock or betray, like all of the emotional things
Yes.
that happen when somebody who has contributed and been a part of, your success decides that they have to go and do something else.
Yeah, it's a moment of grieving.
Mm-hmm.
You're mourning a loss the moment that happens.
And, for context, Chris, who's been our MD for the past few years, is a friend of mine, a former coworker who's he's a great guy and has really helped us. He was behind the revamp of our front of house rig. He's the one who got us fully transitioned into Ableton. I mean, he did a lot of legwork and put a lot of time and effort into making this project better. And I like, words can't describe how grateful I am for that relationship. And I'm also confident that our friendship and our relationship as people has not been affected by his rolling off of the team in any way, because he's good people and he will continue to be good people. And I will continue to reach out to him as a resource when needed and just value him as a person.
That's great.
But if you are a person or a band leader who has a vision and you have the work ethic and the steadfastness to like see a project through, this is just a part of the process. This is just a thing that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I think we talk about it, I think the more that we acknowledge it and kind of like explain the situation, I think it's better for everybody because, like I said, it could be such a difficult thing to get through because you feel like, oh, this is a huge setback. This is a thing. Like, how could this, what are we going to do? When in reality, like if something is your kind of like heart and soul, and it is the thing that means a lot to you, other people can't do that for this thing
Yeah.
because it's yours.
Yeah.
And everybody who contributes brings their own unique kind of flair to it. And it's just the way it goes. It's just
the way
anything
it
that
goes.
you've been doing for a long time is going to have kind of a somewhat rotating cast of folks.
That's just the way it is. Some things will never change.
And it's interesting because we're kind of in this like interesting place in the market because we are a higher end corporate product, and you're either going to catch people in one of two directions. You're going to either catch a young person as they kind of like work their way up in the industry, and you're going to catch people who are a bit older who are kind of reeling themselves back in from whatever thing that they were doing in the industry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are. And at least in my season, like I am much more willing to go for somebody who is kind of pulling back as opposed to somebody who's like trying to like be on their way.
Well, you might hang on to them longer.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at. And the other thing I wanted to kind of like talk about this is that I've already got that spot filled.
Right.
Not like in a full capacity, but like in regards to I've got X number of gigs where I need a bass player, it's taken care of for the most part. And the interesting thing about that is that the person who got that call, first off, they got the call.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't approach. I was the person that reached out to them. I said, this is the thing that I want to extend to you. And the way that you get that kind of call is very specific, and it requires a certain amount of stuff from you as a musician and as a person, let's say.
Yeah.
The guy who got the call, he was a mutual friend of one of the other guys in the band, who has quietly, confidently, and passively acknowledged his interest in being a part of the group over the course of years, like years. Never pushed the issue. Never been
What's
like
he been doing?
just kind of confidently but passively just doing his own thing and being around,
Mm-hmm.
making himself available in social situations and just kind of in general. And, there's always people when you've got something going on that say, I want to be a part of this. And it's kind of easy to go, well, sure. When you've got something where it's not necessarily success, but you've got some momentum
Mm-hmm.
and you've built this thing. And I've had a lot of people email and be like, hey man, let me know any opportunity, where, I could be a part of this thing.
That's the
Because
thing.
for them,
Saying I want to be part of this is really easy.
of course. But what inevitably happened was we had a situation in another project. It wasn't for members only. It was another one of the things that I was working on where I needed somebody to literally stand in for a rehearsal. And he was like, 48 hours notice. He's like, yeah, I could do that, just so you guys could practice and whatever. Cause the bass player in that particular situation was out of state and just couldn't make it for rehearsal. And we wanted to, kind of flesh the sound out and all that. He showed up with less than 48 hours notice and nailed it.
Cool.
And in that moment, he went from being a person where it was like, okay, you're kind of saying like, hey, I want to be a part of this, to, oh, I not only want to be a part of this, but I also can, like, I have the technical acumen and the talent to back it up.
Yeah.
And to do something like that, just honestly, I mean, in that particular instance, out of the goodness of his heart, because I mean, it was literally, he showed up for a rehearsal. It wasn't like a paid thing or whatever, but he showed up and he did a really great job. And in that moment, he became the guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't know it and I didn't know it.
How much prep do you think that took?
I'm honestly not sure.
No, some.
I know how.
Though, not none.
I know how much time he had.
Yeah, in those 48 hours, he spent some portion of them prepping to come to an unpaid, non-gig to show his quality.
And it was like, so I got a message from Chris like, hey, I'm just letting you know that, after this thing, I'm going to be moving on. And I was like, I totally understand. I'm sad that this is the case, but you got to do what's best for you and your family. I'm not that guy.
Right.
If you got something, like most of the people who have left my situation have gone, I got a better opportunity.
Yeah.
If I can't beat them on price, go and do.
Totally.
I want nothing but success for all the people that I work with.
Yes.
Like no hesitation. And so I got that news and I kind of like chewed on it for a little bit because I needed to kind of wrap my head around it.
Right.
And then I texted him. I was like, hey man, cards on the table. This is happening. And you were the first person on the list. So you in? And he was like, yeah, let's go.
Cool.
And that's that.
Love it.
So, we've got some time where we've got to bring him in. We just need to get everybody in the room and just kind of gel and like we just work through it.
Yeah. Play through the show a couple of times. See what happens.
But even that, like, I feel like what I really want to do, because this is just like, how do you manufacture as a group that, Sixth Sense kind of situation or set those lines of communication up? It's like, what if we just like set up weekly, bi-weekly rehearsals where the first 20 minutes have no agenda. It's just somebody starts playing something and you just kind of like learn the process of communicating with each other as musicians.
That's good. That's good. You'll pick up more material that you didn't expect to pick up that way. Someone will start playing some tune and you'll be like, oh God, yeah, that one. Oh.
So there was that. And then also like it's jamming. And I haven't.
Yeah.
We have had many conversations about how, I mean, at least you and I, we're not jammers.
Right.
Jamming is not necessarily like a thing that like we do a whole lot of.
Yes.
But in situations like that, I 100% see the value in doing it as a way to kind of, again, develop that musical shorthand with people.
Telepathy.
So
I think of it as telepathy. There's a way that I'm, with my current project, the current people in my band, I will be playing a song and I'll know without knowing the move my bassist is about to make.
Right.
right? And that's purely, that happens to some extent in the rehearsal room. That happens way more on stage. But there is a band telepathy that happens, that you just are a mind meld before too long. And
well, there's also that, and there's also the idea of learning the patterns of people.
Yeah.
Where it's not necessarily telepathy, but it's an intuition based on precedent.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mean to make it magic. It is that.
It feels like magic.
Feels like
it can.
magic. No, in that moment when you you just know your bassist is headed towards some figure, and you can meet him there on the guitar, and it's like, boom, that moment. Yeah, it feels totally magic. Now, of course, you've learned your bassist, you've learned their moves, their thinking. It's not. I use the word telepathy because it feels like magic in that moment. But the reality is, you spend enough time with them, you spend enough time playing with them, and really, really enough time performing with them. I think each performing hour is worth about 7 rehearsal hours.
Yeah.
And then those magic instants become available.
For sure.
That's my view of it.
I think when you are presented with a situation where your lineup has to change, and it's out of no fault of yours or theirs, and something just has to happen, be aware of the people around you and the people who have made their intentions known. And also acknowledge that, like, sometimes the person that wants to be a part of it is more valuable than, let's say, the hottest hotshot in your market. Because there's something to say about consistency in the lineup. There's something to say about, this sixth sense, this communication, this shorthand, this thing that I think is much more noticeable and more impressive to the audience in general, when they can tell that the people on stage, one, know each other and enjoy being around each other. And to me, that's really that's it for me.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
And I'll take good hang over chops every single time. Like, no hesitation.
Yeah. As long as the chops are at a baseline acceptable.
Yes, there is a baseline, but start looking around. Like, always look around.
Yeah.
You never know when something will fall out from under you. Always keep your head in the swivel.
It's really easy, I think, to fall. It may be a function of the kinds of bands I followed that had a lineup that persisted over decades.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is, in the market we're in, that's really rare. It's really rare. And the pain we feel when a member falls out, it's like losing your arm. But the reality is, nobody's irreplaceable. Nobody's irreplaceable. You're not irreplaceable. And so, when it got clear that the bassist I had for my current project, The New Strange, was not going to work out because he was in 5 other projects. And then I took his suggestion about who to replace him with, and she's been phenomenal. Like, that transition was hard. It was hard because we really felt like that dude was our guy. But his classmate in the jazz bass program at our local jazz department of our local state university that they both graduated from, classmates, equal chops, right? Absolutely equal. And she's both a better hang and, if we're honest, a better player. And I now have to deal with, like, well, is she irreplaceable? The reality is, no. If I replaced her with some other bass player, it would change things. But sometimes things have to change. Like, if she told me she couldn't be part of it anymore, and I'm working hard to keep her well enough booked that she's not going to say that, but were she to, things change. I'd have to find another bassist. There are other bassists out there. It's not the end of the world. I don't want to have to deal with that, really. But if I were to have to, I could.
Yeah. And we all have to be prepared to do that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just interesting when you're dealing with dynamics and people, because, I mean, ultimately we're in the business of people.
Yeah.
And building relationships and making sure that people feel like they want to be a part of what you're doing. And you do that by making sure that you prioritize folks and you give them the latitude to do the things that they need to do in order to do the things that they do for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you take care of them.
Yeah. So in conclusion, start looking for bass players because apparently it's in the water.
Yeah.